So anyway, thank you all for being here, and the folks at the festival who have put this on. Just everyone I talk to says how it's one of the favorite events they've been to, and book festivals. And so very appreciative of everyone that's made this happen. So I'm going to kind of introduce our three authors. I'm going to show you all their books and read their little bio, and then we'll have a few questions and then have some time for y'all for questions as well. So on our far right is Erika Krouse, and here is her book, Save Me Stranger. They'll all be at the signing tent after this, by the way, where you can buy their books, and I encourage and hope that you will be there for that. So Erika Krouse is the author of Tell Me Everything, The Story of a Private Investigation. She's the winner of the Edgar Award, the Colorado Book Award, and the Housatonic, is that pronounced correctly? It's probably not. Okay. Book Award. Come Up and See Me Sometimes, a New York Times notable book and winner of the Patterson Fiction Prize, and Contenders, which is a finalist for the VCU Cabell First Novelist Award. Krouse's fiction has been published in The New Yorker, The Atlantic, Plowshares, One Story, and more. She teaches creative writing at Lighthouse Writers Workshop and lives in Colorado. It's Erika Krouse. And then next to her is Robert Busby. Here is his book, Bodock, which is, I'm a little familiar with that, named after right here, not next to her. Eric messed up the order.
I didn't even need to do that because we've got name tags.
I looked up.
I'm underestimating the intelligence.
That's fine.
Oh, well, no, you're not underestimating the intelligence of the moderator. But Bodock, the Bodock tree, I've heard about it from one person in my life. We'll go over that. My cousin who lives in Prairie, Mississippi, so I've always loved hearing about how tough the fence post, et cetera, the Bodock tree is. But Robert grew up in the hill country of North Mississippi in Pontotoc and has worked as a bandsaw operator, bookseller, copywriter, driving school instructor, powder coater, prep cook, produce clerk, teacher, and satellite television technician. I made the mistake of saying, aren't you a musician, when we met earlier, and because I know Max here is, but he said, no, that's about the only thing I haven't done, so he has not done that yet. Robert's a graduate of the University of Mississippi. He got his MFA in fiction from Florida International University, and his stories have appeared in Arkansas Review, Cold Mountain Review, Footnote, Mississippi Noir, Pank, Southwester is SOU, okay, Surreal South, and others. Currently, he writes, runs, and raises two humans with his wife in Memphis, Tennessee, the biggest town in Mississippi, I call it. And then Max Hipp in the middle. Here is his book, What Doesn't Kill You, Opens Your Heart. And Max is a teacher, writer, and musician from Oxford, Mississippi. His work has appeared in, among others, Southern Humanities Review, Cheap Pop, Smoke Long Quarterly, and Black Warrior Review. He teaches literature and creative writing at the University of Mississippi. So the first question I had, and I thought the moderator in the panel I was in last year helped work, so everybody sitting there who goes first. So we'll start with Erika if we can and come down this way, and then we'll go back that way on the next round. But if you would just, I know people always like to know, kind of a little bit about your writing journey and what led you in your life, anything that comes to mind to become a professional writer and in a career, which y'all have all done. And then if anything comes to mind on what led you to write this book in particular, this book of short stories that you've written.
Okay, I'm going to forget half of those questions, so I'll just start with the last one. So this is my fourth book, and what led me to write this one was in 2014, I think, a writing compatriot and someone in my writing group died by suicide. And it was, no one saw this coming at all. And I was actually supposed to meet with him the next day. And it had this impact on me where I felt like I could have, should have, would have done anything really to stop that tragedy. And I wasn't definitely not the most important person in his life, but I still felt that burden. And it started me into this tailspin of like, can we save each other? How can we save each other? And then I thought about how, books have saved me in the past. And also sometimes random strangers have saved me from worse fates than my current state of being a writer, which is its own problem. And I wrote a story kind of out of that guilt, kind of survivor's guilt in a way. And while I liked the story, it didn't answer the question. So then I wrote another story, and then I wrote another story, and they're all very different. They're set all around the world. They have completely different characters, but it sort of derived from, and I know the last panel was about obsession, and for me, it was just this compulsion to know. And 13 stories later, I still don't know, or 12, I don't know how many are in the book, however many there are, I still don't know the answer to my question, but I do understand the question better. So, and as for what brought me to writing in the first place, I just say like terrible judgment. Yeah.
Yeah, I could speak to that terrible judgment too. Writing journey, that's a long question. So I'm gonna go on. It's gonna take 30 minutes. I hope y'all are good with that. But I took a first workshop ever with Barry Hanna when I was at University of Mississippi, and I had no idea what I was doing, and he took my writing very seriously at a time when, as a new writer, you need that. And so that's a great gift, and I try to do that with students too. But at the time, I figured out writing was the most challenging thing I'd ever tried to do, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing or how to get anywhere with it, and that appealed to me. Just that, I realized that this was a way to understanding characters. I needed to sort of understand myself as a character too, and so there was this learning about self, learning what you don't know, and trying to get better at all these small things. And I feel like I'm still working on that. And so this book is the first book I've written, and it's a collection of. It's got 12 stories in it, and some of them go back about 20 years. One of them goes back 20 years at the beginning of it. And so, yeah, it's this error in judgment. I keep coming back to it, enjoying it. And, yeah.
Can y'all hear me? All right. First off, I want to say thanks to everyone who's in the audience. Like right now, y'all could be at a bar somewhere at this time in the afternoon, and you're here, and I appreciate that. So thank you. I grew up in Pontotoc, and I think I've always written. Until I won the C. Michael Curtis Prize, the biggest prize I'd ever won was won the Pontotoc County Library prize in first or second grade for writing a story about trying to help a rock get back to space. I don't know where that came from, but and then there was a long drought, and then I finally won another award. And but I went to college. And wanted to be a writer, but I didn't know how to make money from that, and I still haven't figured that part out yet. But it sounds romanticized, but I went to school at the University of Mississippi, and I wanted to write, didn't know how to do it, was on the balcony at Square Books, and this is going to sound, I grew up Southern Baptist, and so this was kind of my Damascus Road, moment. But I read Larry Brown's Dirty Work, and was this is what I want to do. I want to try to I don't think I've done that yet, or achieved that yet, but I want to get as close to writing like this as I possibly can. And so in that sort of Southern Baptist tradition, I gave my life to writing, and have been doing that ever since. As far as the the collection. So my collection, the stories all take place in a fictional town called Bodock, which is based off of like my hometown of Pontotoc. But most of the stories take place during the 1994 Mid-South ice storm. And I wrote a lot of those stories when I was in Miami, of all places. Like I went down with like one ice storm story, but I wrote a whole bunch more. So it wasn't intentional on the front end, but I think Miami had something to do with that. And I think it was like, there was like a reverse seasonal affective disorder. Like once I got to like November and it was still just like really brutally hot. And I was like, I've got to write some cold into my life of some sort. And so that's where the ice storm narrative thread came in. And yeah, went from there.
All right, good, thank you. So why don't we let's go around, start with you, Robert, and move on down. The little brochure here, my question's going to kind of feed off of this. I thought it was, well communicated. It says 3 short story writers discuss how their characters navigate moments of profound disruption, exploring the ways people endure and seek connection when circumstances overwhelm them. And y'all have kind of touched on that a bit so far, but are there any particular characters in your book? It's one of the things about short stories that amazes me is how you have to come up with different characters. I know there's a limited number of characters, but you come up with different characters for every story and plot lines and all that. But are there any particular characters in your book that really do this, that, how they navigate moments of profound disruption and they explore ways people endure and seek connection, or any stories, any of your characters or particular stories in your book that you would like to discuss that really particularly mean a lot to you and do that?
Okay. Well, yeah, when I read that description, I mean, the first thing that I thought was that I feel like every like story requires like a disruption of some sort. Like you've got your characters, they live in this like sort of normal, not to get like too into like Campbell hero myth, like structure or anything like that, but like they exist in this like sort of familiar world, and then something like has to come along to disrupt that in order for there to be tension, conflict like that. And to make that story interesting, so I definitely like hope there are disruptions in my stories. And I hope that they're profound disruptions, and that other people like find them profound. I think like one off the top of my head. I mean, like, all right, so I think where those, like, there's a disruption in my stories, and then, like, I think my characters work towards an epiphany that might be profound, I guess. Like, so for instance, in the opening, like, story of Mistletoe, there's Raymond, who is tasked with, he thinks that he needs to keep the family land like in the family, and he has a history of like doing this. He had to save his brother from like betting away like part of his inheritance like to the land, and so he feels like this sort of like stewardship with the land. And then his brother's son, so his nephew, like comes along and sort of like disrupts this because he wants to buy this land for like sort of commercial purposes, which makes sense. He wants to make money, and his dad like bet away, the land or whatever. But I think like towards the end of that story, the epiphany that the character reaches is like he has to wrestle with like, why do I really want to like hold on to this land? He's got some like health ailments and things like that, and he feels like he's outlived his body. There's some like amputations and things like that. You have to like read the story to like that. But he wonders if the land has like outlived its purpose as well. Like, why am I holding on to this land? Do I really feel like it needs to stay agricultural or like close to those sort of roots? Or is it just because I don't want my nephew, who's done nothing to me, but he was the offspring of a brother who, was reckless, and I don't think that he gets an answer, to that either. But I think like he sort of identifies like that question at the end, like why am I trying to do this? So I do think that disruption like leads to something profound, and I hope other stories do it as well. But Max, I'll let you take it from here. Yeah.
I guess I think about this not so much in form of disruption, but just the characters making, terrible decisions and acting in their never in their best interests, which is what I see in people all around me all the time doing. And so it seems like this is trouble, right? This is nothing new, but this sort of ties a lot of the stories together for me in the collection. For instance, there's Pritchard, who is a policeman who hates his job and is working for his boss. His boss is dating his ex, and he picks up he finds this little boy who seems like a runaway, sort of, it's not clear exactly what's going on with him, but Pritchard decides, I'm going to take this kid and we're just going to drive around the county, and maybe things will work out better if I just do this instead of confront what's really bothering him, which is, his relationship, is where he is in life, and these kinds of things. So it's sort of a character running away from trouble, creating more trouble.
Yeah, I like the troublemakers too, for some reason. And I do feel that idea of disruption, sometimes the disruption happens to your characters and sometimes your characters create the disruption. And I most like when your character creates disruption, not just in their world, but also in your reader's world, like for you guys, So an example might be, so I have a story called Eat My Moose, where he's a I don't know, older, well, I say older, he's actually my age, but he's a veteran, and he has terminal cancer, and he belongs to a VA cancer support group. And then a person in their support group asks my main character to help assist with his suicide. So him and the woman he kind of loves, they do this because they're soldiers and they can kind of handle it. Well, for some, who knows why reason, when they do this, their own cancers go into remission. So as long as they're euthanizing people, they're okay, right? And they live in Alaska, and they fly all over Alaska and commit all these assisted suicides. And to me, I'm like, well, of course, if there's suffering and someone wants to end it, why not help them? But I got a lot of pushback from people who were like, that's murder, that's wrong, you're bad. And I got to say, I kind of enjoyed that. I enjoyed bringing up that question. Like, is assisted suicide murder? Because in some states it's not, in some states it is. And is that something government can decide, or is that something we can decide? Is it individual, or is there some kind of truth, universal truth to it? So for me, that was the interesting disruption. And I like when my characters make choices that make sense to them, but they're questionable, they're arguable. That's what I like, is arguable.
So I guess I have a couple of questions follow up would be, having written a short story book collection, for your next book, do you see yourself writing that type of a format, a short story, or more essays, or a novel, or people always ask me, what's your next book, or what are you thinking about next? And along those lines, I guess I throw a couple questions in one. So, anything that was the most rewarding part of and/or challenging part of writing this book, and then on top of that, or I can come back, but on top of that, do you plan on writing a book like this of short stories for your next one, or no idea, or what have you? But kind of start with, what were the most rewarding and challenging parts of putting this together? Because and how long did it take? I mean, some of y'all mentioned kind of, the book I wrote took, I'm almost embarrassed to say how long it took, but I was rewriting, and I got obsessed with it. But, if you tell a bit more about the process and what was rewarding and really challenging about writing this book.
Who do you want to start this time?
Whose
He
turn
hasn't
is
gone
it?
first yet.
Oh, all right, your turn.
That was a lot of questions. I'm trying to, I'm trying to think of one. All right, yeah. For the next book, I don't know. I've got actually, one novel out on submission and another one I'm working on. So I'm not sure when another story collection would come out. That was one of the questions, right?
Yeah, what did you say? You already have a novel you're submitting?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, so you've already got another one finished. Okay.
Yeah. So I've been working on other things, and I guess
Well, that's a lot.
you asked about bringing
Kinda what was the most
the collection together, kind of.
Yeah.
I think for me, the process was looking at what I had and figuring out what works together and figuring out what did not go and why, and just these sort of themes in the stories, how they play off each other, and what works, which ones are going to enhance overall, the whole thing overall, and work as a book, which is I found to be a really different process, because I'd been looking at each story as sort of being separate in themselves as you're sending them out and gathering these rejections and sending them out again, one of them over 50 times, and just in that process, kind of learning, like you're saying, revision and rewriting takes a while, and that's it's another thing that's for me an important part of it, and just but I enjoy that whole process, especially from once it was going to be published, and then working through those last parts of it to make it kind of shining things up, So that's two of the questions. Is there another question?
How long did it take you?
How long did it take me? Well, as I said, one of the stories started about 20 years ago, and began it, and kind of turned it into it's the novella. So in the collection, it's called "What Doesn't Kill You Opens Your Heart," and it's named for the novella. And that was a novel, and I just thrown the kitchen sink in there, and decided that did not work, and I pulled all these things out of it and made it better, bringing it down, compressing it. So that one took a while, but there are some that's probably I messed with for probably 5 years or so, sending those out. But everything, came together in the last few months. Yeah, I even ones that were published, I would change and to make it work with the book as a whole. So, complicated answer.
It was kind of a complicated question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
You want to go?
Yeah, sure, I'll go. So yes, this collection, in the lifespan, I guess, of the collection, it took about like 2/3 of the time to write the stories. Probably got this finished, started just before my MFA program, 2008, and then I think I had the collection finished around 2018, 2019, and it just took that long to get it published until now. So in that time, I was working on a novel as well that takes two of the stories from this collection that they have a crime element that connects those two, that they overlap, and so then the novel sort of carries that further to see what the consequences of that are, what the rest of that story looks like now that there's this sort of collision that happens in two different parts of this collection. That novel obviously also takes place during the ice storm of '94. I don't think that I will write any more ice storm stories after that, but there are lots of other weather patterns that I could base the next collection off of. So, tornado, pretty common in this area of the country. I don't know. Yeah, it's just it's a wild world out there. I can't wait to find another unifying weather event to connect all my stories.
So I started, my first story that I wrote for this collection was in the beginning of 2015. So it was a long time. And the cool thing about a collection is you can work on other things, but you just write short stories, and then you sort of look up and you're like, oh, I kind of have almost a book here, right? But I knew it would be very, 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 very hard to get a short story collection published, as you guys know, right? Publishers don't generally want them. So I was like, I have an idea. I'll write this memoir, because I was also, I worked as a private investigator for 15 years, and I worked on the first ever Title IX sexual assault case in history. And I always kind of wanted to write about that experience. So I was like, I'll write that memoir, and I'll piggyback the book on. So and the collection was done, but I only had a chapter of the memoir. I mean, like, I'd written almost nothing. And so, you know, I was going to sell the memoir on proposal, theoretically, and then with this collection, I was going to sneak it in that way. But it didn't quite initially work out that way. You know, publishing houses were like, we'll take the memoir, but not that janky short story collection of yours. And then some of them would say, you know, it's a 2-book deal or nothing, and they'd say, well, then nothing. So that's how much they don't want to publish your short stories. Finally, I found a publisher who kind of forgot that they had agreed to do the short stories. They just kind of forgot about it because they were excited about the memoir. So, but they were like, okay, well, you know what, we'll do that short story nonsense later. And we'll do the book you haven't written first. So I wrote that book and published it. And then in that time, the world changed so much that when I was about to send the book, the collection that I thought was done, I was like, oh, a third of these stories have to go. These don't fit our times anymore. You know, Roe v. Wade was toast. And there were some stories I could kind of rehabilitate a little bit, but about a third of the book I had to just throw away and write new stories. So that was fun and interesting. So so that was, I think that answers some of your questions about the challenges, but also the opportunities. I got to write some of the stories I like the most. And had I not been challenged then that way, I wouldn't have written those stories. As for what's next, I'm kind of allergic to doing the same thing twice, with the exception of writing short stories. It's my favorite form. I will always write short stories, I think, forever until they take the pencil out of my dead hand. But my next thing will be a historical mystery. Have I written historical fiction before? No. Have I written a mystery before? Not a novel. So that's going to be another interesting experience. But the short stories kind of can keep me grounded, and then hopefully I'll be able to trick someone into another collection someday.
So, yeah, you just kind of touched on a little bit the challenges with publishing, and in a setting like this, you often will find, you know, aspiring writers and authors. And so my question would be, you know, what advice, encouragement, warning would you have, whether it's in the writing process, the editing process, the publishing process, that would you have for anyone out there that's considering doing what you all have done? And if we start with you, Erika. You just kind of were, or if you need a break, we'll start back here.
I actually want to know, how many of you write? People are like, I don't want to admit that. Some of you. How many of you write short stories? Oh, a lot of you. Awesome. So I think one thing that inhibits a lot of writers, especially with a form like short stories, or really any writers, is doubt, right? Am I wasting my time? Does my voice mean anything? It sometimes feels like you're shouting into a well or your pillow or something like that, because you're sitting there like this and you're not hearing anything back, right? But sometimes I think that doubt, that doubt creates writer's block. It creates all sorts of, problems inside the text too, and like insecurities in your writing itself. So if you can, I think some advice I would give would be like, someone I know phrased it as, write as if. Write as if it's never going to be read. Write as if you don't even care about your crippling low confidence, right? Write as if, it's like that, dancing in the dark idea, right? Just write as if you can say anything and there will be no consequences, because you can always fix things later, right? And I think if you can do that, once you realize what's on the page, you might be like, wow, this actually is important. My voice does count. I've never read anything like what I'm writing right now. That's kind of cool. I just made something out of nothing. I mean, painters need paint. We just need paper and pen, right? Or computers, or I guess we do need some stuff. But our raw materials are very, very few, except for our imaginations. And as time goes on, fewer and fewer people can do what we're doing. They're mostly staring at their rectangles, all day. I was on the plane, and on the whole plane, there was only one person reading a book, and it turned out she was coming to this conference. What you are doing isn't just some folly. It's not just, oh, wow, I'm fooling myself. If you are a person who writes, if you are a person who puts words on the page, I hate to say it, but that's chronic. You can't get away from it. It's part of your identity. It's part of your DNA, because it is a very rare person who does this. So if you can let go of the doubt, because, whether you have the doubt or not, you are still going to be that person. So if you can just let go of that and do whatever you have to do to let go of it. Therapy, some people do drugs, not advocating that, but something sustainable, whatever you can do to shake that off, that's going to be the best thing for your writing career, I think.
Yeah, piggyback a little bit off of that. I think, yeah, absolutely. You have to not, for me, I'm not going to prescribe this for anybody, but I had to think, well, this doesn't have to go anywhere. This doesn't have to mean anything. It can just stay on the laptop. It can stay on the piece of paper in front of me. And I think to do that, you have to enjoy the process and enjoy the process of making things, because it's a gift. It's a gift to have time to do this, and there's pleasure in the making of things. And a lot of people, they want to make things, and this is something that, as we're saying, it doesn't require a lot of outside material. So just take pleasure in making the thing. And also, there's lots of talented people, lots of talented writers, but the difference is you just keep swinging, you keep going, right? That's the difference. You just keep plugging away at it, no matter, I think, I would say no matter what, but I don't know. Maybe there's some reason why you should stop writing, but I don't know. It's fun. Just do it. Keep doing it.
Let's see. I feel like I would crumble under the weight of the responsibility of trying to give anybody advice on like how to write and how to keep writing. Because I feel like every time I start a new short story, I am having to like learn how to tell stories all over again. It's like I can't remember anything that worked the last time, or it doesn't work this time. I feel like a lot of my process is just like slinging shit against the wall to see like what sticks, and like, oh, okay, well that works in this story, it didn't work in that other story, or whatever. And I feel like that's kind of like my process. But I guess like to piggyback off of like what y'all said is like you have to find like something that keeps bringing you like back to the desk or whatever the place is that like you're writing, and because like I think it was, I don't think this saying is like unique to John Dufresne, but I went to grad school and he was my mentor like while he was there, and he just talked about like how the muse shows up at the desk, whether you're at the desk or not. But if you want to hear the muse, like you have to be there doing the work, anyway. And so yeah. And then I think like as you do it more and more, it doesn't necessarily make you any better at the very beginning of the story, the new story that you're writing, but you get better at like recognizing what's not working and like how to problem solve that the more and more you write. But I think you just have to embrace the mystery and the existential dread that comes with like a story, just like you're just fighting that narrative like into like whatever framework you're trying to like put it in. And I could tell you to be patient, but I'm not very patient when I'm doing it like either. So, but that's all I've got.
Good. Thank you all. I've got a couple more, but I don't want to run out of time for you all and what questions y'all might have. So you can address them to the authors in general or one in particular. Does anybody have any questions out there? Yes, sir.
Each of you have to eat, make a living, and enjoy the things. I'm curious about kids and creating a craft. Daily routine, 6 hours a day, 3 days, and we'll take a day and go on a bike ride or get high.
Both, all.
Yeah.
I try it every day to not bike ride or get high, but just to work on the writing. And sit in the chair but I mean, writing to me, you don't have to be making something completely new every day. It's working. To me, it's the same, like working on revising stuff or that kind of thing is a part of it. But yeah, every day, not for very long, I probably get in 2 hours or something like that.
I am, again, allergic to doing the same thing even 2 days in a row. So I'm more like, have you ever like, you dive into a pool and take a big deep breath and then you go in and then you come up and you're in a different place? For me, it's like that. So I don't write for periods and then I'm like, oh crap, I have a really big thing that I want to do and it's going to take 3 years or 2 years or whatever. Or short stories, it's different, right? It's usually about 2-3 months. But then I just like kind of gather all the pressure. It's like, it feels like this, like, it feels actually like physical pressure. And then I take a deep breath and then I'm just in there. And then I'm walking around like a zombie and people say things to me and I'm like, yeah, sure, I don't know, whatever. And so I act kind of like, like a little mentally ill for a little while. And then I kind of come out of it and then I revise and edit and all those things and then live like a normal person and people can have conversations with me and then it's back into that. For me, one thing I love about short stories is you get to inhabit people who are so different from you. I have a story set in the coldest town on earth, but, with a 20, I can't remember how old she is, 23-year-old mayor, right, of the coldest town on earth in Siberia. I have stories from the perspective of men, which I'm not, and stories from the perspective of kids and who were not me, and just very, very, very different people from me. So for me, I need that immersion feeling, so I don't do the routine thing, because it's against, it doesn't work with me. But I really believe that everyone has to do it the way they do it. Some people, I'm like, maybe you're a 20-minute-a-day writer, maybe that's you. That can be a writing session. I know I have students who've written full books in 20 minutes a day. And some people are like, they're more obsessive and they're like a weekend warrior writer, So I think it's more, you have to really pay attention to your overall personality with regard to that. Maybe you'll disagree though.
I mean, I agree with most of that. I'm a creature of habit, though, so I feel like I have to, like I have to have some sort of regiment. And when I was working on a lot of these stories, like post MFA, and when I was working on, this novel that is unpublished, and but I was teaching middle school English, and so I was like waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning to write for like 2.5 hours before I had to like get my kids up and get them dressed and fed and dropped off at school, and then all of that. And I think but I do have these it's like when something's going well, or even when it's not going well, but you're like, I have to solve this problem before I become like not this psycho that's like inhabiting like the same space as like my family, and like I'll become obsessed and I'll just like think about it all the time, and I'm like trying to like do it. So when I was a middle school teacher, I would I'm not anymore, so I'm not going to get like fired for doing this, but I would often like during homeroom, I would just like tell my kids, like, you have to bring a book every single day to school that we are not studying, and you're going to read that book for 50 minutes. And then I would like write for 50 minutes at my desk. And so I would get, a lot of work done that way as well, right? Yeah. So.
Yes, ma'am.
Touched on it a little bit, and so I write short stories for fun. I haven't been able to teach them that way in my favorite journal or whatever, so I make it for fun. To make my shit y'all don't teach that as well. But you talk about publishers not wanting collections of short stories, and that shocks me because in this day and age where people have such short things, like with big.
Well, thank you. I have an actually very cynical answer for this. So I learned that the book industry is very influenced by the film industry, and the film industry is very much influenced by the Asian film industry, because in India and other parts of Asia, they actually still go to movie theaters, often to escape the climate, right? And to be in air conditioning or whatever. So short stories do not adapt very well to film. Isn't that stupid? It's so stupid. And that's why is they can't see the bigger sales that come from film. However, there is this other thing with short stories, and by the way, I really hope your stories make it out of your notebook. And if you go on my website, I have a ranking of literary magazines and sort of like a how to do it. So just go to my website, look on there. Maybe that'll make you do it. But the cool thing about short stories, and I'm sorry, I just totally jumped in on that. It wasn't my turn. I'm bad.
I think I don't know who's,
But I'm not done.
I don't know whose turn it is either, so keep going.
Okay, so the thing about your stories is that you have this whole other opportunity of connection, because with a short story collection, you can take, say you have 12 stories in a collection. You have 12 places you can publish those stories, and all those magazines, those literary magazines, bring their own readership. There are people who read those magazines religiously. So a short story collection, if you're very, very lucky, it'll sell like 5,000 copies if you're so lucky. But some of these magazines have like 40,000 readers all by themselves, right? So you can really grow your career as a writer in that way by trying to place these stories in these magazines before you even collect them as a book. Does that make sense? I was, I work with writers, and I often tell people who write either essay collections or short story collections, I'm like, worry about the book, but don't worry about the book. Just worry about, sending stuff out and getting your stuff out. So maybe get it out of your notebook, get it out there and see what happens. So sorry I jumped in on all that.
I didn't have an answer to that, so I'm glad you did. No. No, I honestly didn't have an answer. I know like a lot of small obviously like some people, like some publishers like publish short story collections. I do think that like it's difficult. And I think like I gave up on sending this collection out for a while because I started focusing on the novel because I wasn't getting, I would submit this to like contests and whatnot and it would maybe be like a finalist or something like that, but never, never got accepted and published. And so I started focusing on the novel, and my idea was like, oh, I'll just get this novel like represented, and we'll get this sold, and we'll like just piggyback the short story collection like off of it, which that might have been like a thing at one time. But like, yeah, I don't know if that's, if that works. That well like anymore anyway. I would say though, I think that like film should start trying to adapt short stories more than novels now, because I feel like the format is just like better for that. I feel like we lose a lot with novels, like when we're trying to fit it into an hour and a half or 2 hour long movie, especially now that like, we have the 8 episode or 10 episode, like really well done television like series. I feel like short stories like myself like adapt better to the film format than novels do. And as soon as the people with the money understand that too, we can start, getting our short stories collections published more. But yeah, that's.
My answer is very short. I have no idea why people don't want to publish short stories.
Because they're awesome.
How do you know, did you know when story is finished, it's done? Do you need to go?
Erika, we need you to jump in.
Go first. I already went first.
I'm not entirely sure. Because again, I feel like I'm like relearning how to write a short story every time I'm writing one. So I feel like there's, I don't know, the simplest, like, I don't know. I'm failing at this question. This was not the one for me to jump in on first. I need someone else to save me. I think if once you have it written, you go back and look at the story as a whole, and like you start to pick out and start like sort of like shaping the plot into like a sort of meaningful like string of actions that are driven by like what the character wants, what's driving them. And then by the end of the story, like you have some answer to did they get what they want or did they not get what they want, or did they decide for whatever reason that they didn't want what they wanted at the beginning of the story? And is that is that answer like justified? Do you justify that answer by the end of the story as well? Like did what they want at the beginning get resolved in some way? They were successful, they weren't successful, or they decided not to be successful, whatever.
Well, one answer to that is, for me, is it's finished when it's published and it's off my desk. That's when it's done. The other answer, I guess, is we're talking about endings, and I guess, I have to. That is a hard one because it has to do with revising it and figuring out if you are, if you're juggling, if you look at it as juggling a bunch of, bowling pins in the air, are you catching all of those at the end? And that's going to be different with every story. And so I guess I'm looking at it that way.
So I have 3 things. I had time. I had time to come up with 3 things. And I just forgot what the 3 things. Okay. So one is when I just can't. I keep like changing the same word to this and then that and the back and forth, and I really cannot think of another single thing to do to the story. The second thing is, and I don't really know how to describe it except for I just call it a thud, where I feel this when I read it, like it's right in this region here, like it hits me in some emotional way. When I have the thud, it means I executed all the things I needed to do to have the thud, and then hopefully maybe someone else will feel the thud. And the third thing no longer can happen because there was this one editor, he published my first short story. I idolized the guy. He was apparently extremely harsh. In fact, one time he was like, "Your story's disgusting. Don't send me this stuff." But I thought he was just the most, he started my career, really. So I'd be ready to send to him, and then I'd be like, "Oh, no, 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 it's not ready yet. No, no, no," because he's going to say I'm disgusting again. Or, so then, so when I feel like excited, when I used to feel excited to send to him, then I knew it was done. But he died, the asshole. So now I don't have that third thing. So I guess I don't know either. No, but like the other two things I have to rely on more.
I think we have time for one more question if, yes, ma'am.
So, I'm metaphoric, so I'm gonna kind of throw a metaphor out there. So it's kind of like teaching. They say people who teach people who can't teach, right? So would you say those who can't push themselves to write a novel, a short story? I'm saying that way, but also there's a sense of brevity that comes with a short story and a sense of verboseness that comes with a novel. When you're going in and you're writing, like do you know that you're going to make this a short story, or do you hope? Because I don't think unless they like writing short stories, most people think they're going to write a big book. They have that idea, they're like, this is going to be the book, this is going to be it, but to have multiple, 12 stories, I don't know if I have 12 stories in me, but yeah. So I guess I'm just, as I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, I often think I have a novel in me, but then I also think, I feel like they're probably just short stories. You kind of answer the question on like, when do you stop? But then it's like, how do you know that it's going to be a short story? Like, what are those elements that you're going into, knowing that this is what you want? Hope that's the question.
For me, I think a short story, I can tell when it's going to be a short story because I have these, the idea is a little smaller in scope. You're going to have, I don't know, there are not going to be as many scenes, not as many characters, that kind of thing. And a lot of times it's pretty voice-driven for me. A novel, I think, I've tried writing a novel as a short story kind of by the seat of my pants, and it's not a great idea for me. I eventually have to go back and structure it better. So I think for me, a short story is just, you can tell it's just a little smaller at first.
I'm going to disagree with Max. So I think a short story can have as much ambition as fewer words, of course, than a novel. I think I've read short stories that are just as big as a novel, but one thing short stories get to do is they're by nature an experimental form. So you can skip the parts that you know would bore the crap out of you when you're writing a novel, and you can condense it and like pack the snowball into a short story. Does that make sense? But and I think when you said, you don't know if you have 12 stories in you, I have to say, do you remember there were like these trick cups where you drink them and then they refill? Remember that? I feel like that's what writing is, right? So if you're like, I don't have 12 stories in me, you do. You just have to dump out the one that you're working on right now, and then it's going to refill and you're going to have a new one, right? But you can't have that new one until you dump out that one. But and what that also does is it teaches you scope. So, and I don't know if I actually have the superpower. I tell myself I do. I probably really don't. But when I read, even when I read like a client's work or student's work, I'll know how many words, like a word count comes in my head. I'll be like, okay, I read this 80,000 word novel, but this really needs to be a 17,000 word novella. I'll just sort of like again, I don't really, there's no way to prove that I can do this really. But I think I can. And when I'm thinking of an idea, I'll be like, this is a 5,000 word short story, but that's from experience. That's because I dump out the cup and it refills, right? So I think as far as what, going into it, you don't decide. Just when you start writing, you're just like, I'm going to see what I have to say. And then again, more you dump out, you're like, wow, I have so much more to say about this than I thought. Or you're like, no, I said it. I said all I want to say. And wow, it was only 500 words. Now I can publish Flash, right? Now I'm a Flash writer. You can sort of let the topic and your passion for it and your ideas dictate what that is. And then sooner or later, you'll have the superpower too. You write 12 of them and you're going to be like, okay, this is 7,000 words, or this is 9,000 words, or this is 2,000 words. Does that make sense?
Pretty good.
Robert?
Yeah, I don't know if I have anything to add to that because I have sometimes I know something's going to be a short story, and then it keeps going on and on, and I misjudged as you said, the scope or the framework that I needed to. So I may have intended for it to be a short story, but then it ends up being a novella or a novelette. I don't think I've had one yet that unintentionally became a novel. But you'll be surprised, about how many stories you have in you as well. Just like Erika was saying, I used to think I'm never going to write more than the 8 stories that I've already written or the 9 stories I've already written. But you've got more stories in you than just that. You have as many stories in you as you care to put to paper. Yeah.
Very good. Well, thank you all. Y'all did a great job.
I know I'm the last.
We're kind of late, Flanagan, but you got one? I know this fella here, Michael Flanagan.
So, just real quick, we're all different ages in here, different places in our lives. What advice do you have to give for people who are looking at doing what we're talking about and saying either I'm too young, I'm too old, I've got too many kids, what are your thoughts about where you are in life, getting started? And Jeff, you hit on that too.
Well, I would say, I almost don't think about that because I was too old and had too much going on to start a first book. I'd written privately my whole life since I was 12 or 13, and then I'm not going to say exactly how old I was, but my first novel came out last year, and I was no spring chicken, and it took a long time. And so I'd say, never give up, and you only for me, except when it's done is when you finally kind of give up, say, I can't do it anymore, I'm done. But, I would say there's always an excuse to not be able to write. And it's, you can read author's history where, someone was a surgeon and, they got up at 4 a.m, wrote for 4 hours. Everybody's got a different routine, but, you never know where it'll go, and try not to, no matter how young or old or busy or whatever you are, if it's in your heart and you're inspired to do something and feel like called and you need to do it, do it. That'd be my thought. But
I'll just say there's a long list of writers who were 40, 50, 60 or older when they published their first book. So, and that could have been because they decided late, or it could have been because they kept having to just grind it out, and finally it landed in the right reader's hand at the right time. But I don't think, I turned 41 this year, and this is my first book. I thought I'd be a lot younger when I had my first book come out. But I wasn't, and it was humbling, and it was probably good for me. But I don't think there's no age limit at, just start writing today, no matter what age you are. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's great to be publishing something in your 40s for the first time, and think how many lives you've led by that point. The perspective you have on that kid you were when you were 20, and how hilarious that guy is compared to looking back on these things. So I think there's something to be said for having a lot of experience and a lot of the ability to look back on these things and making something out of it, I think that perspective helps.
I agree with all of that, and I also think, all writing, you're showing what's it like to be this person, right? And this person might be 4 years old. This person might be, 20 times that. Math's hard. So, whatever that is, that's what we want to learn. What's it like to be that person, right? So, in some ways, it's nicer to be older because you have lived more. But also, if you're younger, what's it like to be you or someone that you're imagining, right? That's all valuable to your reader. So, I'd like to say age has nothing to do with it, but it doesn't have anything to do with the value that your reader's going to get from the work, I think.
Yeah, and I would just, I'd say, I'm always amazed when people in their 20s and 30s, frankly, publish these, great works, because I'm like, I would have had, for me and writing, it's the experience in life and, people you've met and things, ups and downs, and it's kind of motivation and anyway. So, yeah, I hope, and that wraps it up for today. I do want to thank our sponsors for this, Julie and Brad Chism also, and the festival for everything.
Thank you, guys.